passionate about utilizing technology in creative and effective ways to simplify workflows and produce cost-effective results for the municipal sector. At Consortech, Leslie leads the consulting team in optimizing the use of FME and ArcGIS and accompanying clients towards geospatial performance. Rob and Leslie will present to us on how FME has been leveraged to produce and automate workflows from GeoTab to Esri's operations dashboard and Power BI to give us an updated view on operations in a relevant and timely manner. And again, we remind everyone, turn off cameras and microphones during the presentation, hold those questions to the end, and if you want to write down your questions, just toss them in the chat there. And we also encourage you to remain on the call after the webinar to network and socialize with your fellow B-Spatial members for about 30 minutes. And with that, on this snowy day, I will pass it off to you, Rob and Leslie.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Clifford. My name is Rob. I know lots of people here, and I'm excited to meet others as well. And we've been working closely with Leslie and the team at Consortech on this project. It's a very great day to be doing this because it just started snowing in East Gwillimbury. And I can tell you that the dashboard has started showing that, so that's exciting. Perfect timing.
We're going to get a live view.
Yeah, that comes a little later, but you
Yeah,
know, to timestamp it, I've got 3.5% route completion on the winter maintenance. Clifford gave a bit of a background, but I'll expand on that in terms of what we've set out to accomplish. The Town of East Gwillimbury has our fleet equipped with smart devices. That's more than just the GPS. We're tracking, you know, speed, deceleration, plow status, salt status, and a little more detail than that. And GeoTab is the system that's used to monitor operations for all fleet management, but especially winter clearing. The capabilities are very excellent, but they're not widely available across the town. It's something that staff, it's best with staff that are familiar with it. There's a lot there. It's very useful, but for us, the goal was, okay, how can we make something that's a little simpler and easier to share across the town? So we were requested to build a dashboard. There were some specific examples that we were pointed to. And we decided early, and with cooperation from our road operations team, that we didn't want to redevelop what GeoTab does. The purpose is, let's build something that's for distributing the information in the simplest, quickest format possible. So Leslie's here. We hired Consortech, and there were two main objectives there. We upgraded our FME server environment and also worked on the logic to bring in the information from GeoTab to our GIS. And as you'll see, there's quite a variety of tools that are used here. And I would say that can seem like a bit much, but they're all our standard tools that we've kind of deployed as our standards at East Gwillimbury. So for us, it's in the comfort zone. The real highlight here is FME server and its capabilities. So Leslie, I will lead up to that point, and Leslie will be able to share more detail on the benefits of what we've deployed and how FME server really drives the dashboard.
Yep.
So in our first iteration, we've developed the dashboard to give that quick status. And I do want to clarify, it could be for any purpose. It may not necessarily be for plowing because it could be salting or treating the roads. The answer they wanted to get to was, has a plow been here? Has this road been serviced? So some of the technology that are in use to make it happen are the GeoTab adapter. That's a special tool that helps synchronize the data into our own SQL server. Our FME server at the center, running on a 5-minute and 10-minute schedule, depending on which update is happening. And we do use ArcGIS dashboards. So that's the key end user tool that is distributed across the town. And we also have a winter event log for the road operations staff. It's mobile, designed for mobile, and they're logging their work, and the management staff are also logging winter events. So you'll see how that actually comes into play with the logic on the dashboard as well. Because as I mentioned, with today being a new winter event, we actually saw that get created when we were meeting before this presentation, and now you'll get to see how it filtered everything that happens since that date on the dashboard. So we don't have a public map at this time. That will be a future deployment. There's been some discussion on how we would do that. It would have to be a little different. And that would include refining the intelligence on that quick status to be a little more detailed. We're finding that balance right now on the threshold of what determines route completion. We did go through a product selection at the start of the project. We decided we were able to use in-house tools with some enhancements, one being the FME server upgrade, but got a little more into some Power BI licensing as well. And that gives us a lot of flexibility. Big benefit to that is that all the technical skills that have been built to make this happen have transferred to quite a few other projects for our team. And so the ROI on this whole thing has been quite a bit beyond the project, and that's part of Consortech's model. I did want to give a shout out to Newmarket, Town of Newmarket. They gave us some great advice early on, and we were able to see from them what was possible. They have a similar method that they've done to produce their snowplow map, and that's via the York Info partnership. As I mentioned, it's not a single solution, but we do have a variety of tools, and they're able to scale as we need to. We invested in Consortech to do the upgrade and the workflow automation. That I'd like to highlight again, that vastly improved our knowledge with our internal staff of how to build and publish FME workflows. So now we carry that forward into what's been a year of dozens of automations that we've built for other projects. And along with that, we were able to upgrade our server hardware, so that helps us boost the FME server itself in terms of its ability to run on a little more demanding schedule. Leslie will go into detail about that. I just wanted to quickly show our overall architecture. So we've got the snowplows, of course, out on the roads, reporting back to the main GeoTab system. Our adapter pulls down to our SQL server. We call it the GeoTab staging database. That's where FME is reading from. It also picks up the winter event date to help filter the data, so you're not sifting through literally millions of records. And the output is really to a geospatial layer. That's the shapes are all predetermined because they're predetermined routes, but it's the status that gets updated via the FME server, as well as the plow locations. And again, those are set data points that just simply move their location gets updated. And we're sending the information back out to staff through the operations dashboard, or just ArcGIS dashboards, I think it's called. And we've been able to make that available in their staging room up on the wall with a couple extra pieces of technology there. There's also that logic. There's the bottom Power Apps and Power BI elements that help with the winter event management. So those were kind of, I wouldn't want to say secondary requirement. The added flexibility to give them some tools to track winter events and all of the maintenance that happens within them, that was a big goal, and we were delivering that through some of the Microsoft configurable products. So the Power Apps might seem a little much. It was pretty straightforward to do that and set up in a SharePoint environment. And we're able to connect to that with FME. So speaking of FME, I will turn it over to Leslie to really give an overview of not just the logic we deploy, but also the benefits of the server environment itself and how automations really help the process.
Sure, thanks, Rob. If I can't do next slide, I might have to ask you to do it, all right?
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, cool. Yes, it will be teamwork. Okay, as this project was. Actually, I'm going to come back one.
Okay.
Oh, come back two. So here we see the role of FME server, which for those of you who are familiar with the FME technology, is actually now called FME Flow. And the idea being that it's kind of acting as an interpreter or a bridge, because the way the GeoTab data comes in, it's sort of raw data in terms of like where have the plows been. So it's all their GPS data, in addition to some of the telemetry data, right, Rob? Like, you know, with salt being thrown down and stuff like that as well, right? And but the idea being that if our end game is to create something that's easy for anybody to interpret, even if they don't have the sort of like technical knowledge to look at a breadcrumb of trucks and understand what's been done, what FME is doing here is it's taking that data and interpreting it in a way so that when it gets presented on an Esri dashboard, it's you know, easier for you know, everybody to sort of get the picture, because the main picture most people need to know is not did this guy drop, you know, salt exactly on all the dots on the road and stuff like that. That's something that the operations manager in GeoTab you know, is maybe looking at, you know, how his staff is moving around and what's happening, but we're just interested in looking at a broad picture and seeing how much of the town has been plowed, for instance, in the last 24 hours. So that's the picture we're trying to get to. So we have to take that raw data and make it into a picture that we can use. Is that right, Rob? Oh, you're on mute.
Very much so.
And I can actually change the slides. So yeah. Yay teams. So there's actually two major things that go on with FME. So FME has two major components, right? There's the part that's the data processing itself. So we're taking raw data, we're doing something to it to prepare it for an audience in a way that other people can digest it. So that's the data crunching part of it. So to do that, we use the FME workspaces, right, in the FME forum product, and we create a data flow. And then the next step after that I'll talk about is the automation. So we think of FME as having two major components to it. We have the component that's data processing, what I'm doing to data, and then the automation component is how does the process run automatically, get kicked off? How do I know if it's running, if it's not running? How do I track it? That's the enterprise version of the application. So the first thing that we did with Rob was do a migration of the FME server or flow environment. You know, it's good to keep the application up to date to make sure we can synchronize correctly with our Esri environments. To make sure that we can synchronize with any of the, you know, the APIs, SharePoint, and other environments that we want to, and to make sure that we have like the latest security features, you know, on the web components of FME Flow and stuff like that as well. What we're looking at here is a little Visio showing what the FME data process is doing. So this is like a little bit more simplified rather than the actual workspace, but it's kind of giving us an idea of the business logic, right? So to identify a snow event, you know, we're pulling the data from the SharePoint, which identifies like a time stamp. Oh, somebody has their microphone on. And then what we're doing is we're pulling that data from the GeoTab SQL like hosted database that they have. This allows us to then pull all the relevant GPS points, and then we're using, you know, a buffer around the road network in order to identify if a road has been plowed or not. Okay, so the idea being that without it being like a perfect exact science, the idea is if the plow has at least a minimum number of GPS points or presence along a road segment, we're going to consider that segment as having been serviced. And so this allows us to give an easier view for the average person to be able to interpret a map. Because if you look at the map and you only look at the breadcrumbs, to be able to visually know if it's 20% that's covered or if it's 50% that's covered is very difficult. So this is the idea, to be able to produce the statistics and to produce an actual, you know, easy to read report to show the progress of the road operations. So there's a few things going on here. So, you know, the data processes are pulling the raw points and sending them into an Esri layer, but they're also doing an, you know, a geo fencing kind of exercise to identify which roads have been covered. Is there anything you want to add to this, to my explanation, Rob?
That was perfect.
Thank you. Very nice. So I will add, though, that we did do this collaboratively. So one of the objectives was to, you know, do this in a way where the East Gwillimbury people can then kind of own the processes, make adjustments if they need. So if they decide I want to adjust the buffers, or if they decide I want to adjust the math calculation of how many points need to go along a road, this gives them the latitude to evolve the product as they go along. So for us, they get more value, right? They don't just get the data process, they get the knowledge to build their own, they get the knowledge to evolve the process and really take ownership of the tool over time. Does that make sense? All right. Oh yeah, I'm in control of the PowerPoint. I was waiting for you to change the slide and I realized I was the slide changer.
I think it may only change for you. I think I'm still.
Oh, you're still changing it?
Can Wendy or Clifford confirm?
Do you see the FME server automations page, Rob?
I don't.
No, I see now I do.
Now we've
FME
moved.
server,
So that
yep.
was me. There we go.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I have a fake button and it changes the slides for me. That's kind of excitingly interesting. Okay, so we create the data process, right? We're creating a simplified set of data that then the dashboard that Rob will show us. And we're going to do a live demo, which is like super exciting and always goes well. Basically what we're going to talk about now is that automation bit. So the data process crunches the data, but now I need to refresh my view because the road operations are going over a certain number of hours depending on how long the snowstorm is and how long the road operations take. And when we talk about road operations, I think it's worth mentioning, like Rob, that sometimes it's just salting operations, right? Sometimes there are different kinds of things we consider a road operation, right? For winter operations.
Correct. So the way we set it up was let the management declare the event. It could be a maintenance event or a winter event, and it could be salting, DLA, snow clearing, and that's what comes through the Power App. So then you have that little logic in the bottom of the dashboard saying what's happening. And then really the percent complete is all relative to that. And it's just showing, it is fairly simple at this point. It's just showing that vehicles performed that service, you know, where did they do that and how far along are they? It's just for that snapshot, like what percent are we at? The details further in GeoTab. So.
Yep, but the average the average employee at the city who needs to know where the operations are at needs a simplified version, right?
Exactly.
So that's, you don't have to teach people a more complex software. Esri's dashboards are fairly intuitive for people to use. And so that's the idea behind this. So now we create that data process, and that data process is where we get to do the geography of it, right? Where we're saying, okay, we're taking raw GPS points and we're going to turn them into interesting information analytically. But now we need to automate that. And that's where the enterprise version of FME comes in into this solution. So the idea being that with the FME flow, or FME server as it used to be called, you can automate multiple ways. Okay, so the way that was chosen for this is by using schedules. So what you guys are seeing here on the screen are the automations that were created. So the green box is the trigger. What triggers my process to run? Sometimes the green box is a file arrives in a folder that it's being watched. Sometimes the green box is a call from another application pushes a call to the FME server to kick off a data process. In this case, we know we want to schedule this every 5 or 10 minutes, depending on the type of data we're processing. And this also makes sense because we want to be able to have, that kind of view and refresh rate is very reasonable for the type of operations we're tracking, because we're not looking for seeing the truck moving down the road. We're looking for a overall picture of where things are at. So this is a good pace for the needs for this process. However, this can be adjusted as well, right? We choose how often to schedule the task. So here we have, in this case, on the left, we have current plow and current event info. So this is, a chain, so this is one schedule kicks off a singular process. And at the successful completion of that process, as this is the one on the left, the first orange box, it then kicks off the second one. So this allows me to chain two data processes together. So I'll only run data process 2 if data process 1 ran successfully. On the right side, where we have the road and sidewalk completion assessments, I believe this is your 10-minute one, right? It's like the
Correct.
Screen.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the one that runs every 10 minutes and does the analysis of the percentage complete. This one is only going to run, this one's going to run both at the same time. So we can actually have a schedule kick off 2 processes, or we can have a schedule kick off 1 process, and then so we can do job chaining, or we can kick off the processes if they're not interrelated to each other. So there's different ways we can work with, FME. One of the nice things about since 2019 is that it's visual. I can see what kicks off what and how each of the parts of my automation are related to each other. And then I can build in some assurance. If something goes wrong, I can have my an email sent to me if it's very urgent, or I can just track in a dashboard the running of my data processes. So so this is what I call, like I said, the automation part of it. So we worked with Rob's team on both. So both the data part and how are we going to automate it. Is there anything you want to add to the processes, Rob?
I think we're at a point where it's kind of funny because this process runs frequently all winter and then is suddenly gone. So it does place a high demand on our engine, and we only have
Yep.
one at this time. So there's some architectural considerations for us right now.
Yep.
But we schedule our other, say, daily or weekly to run at night when this is a low demand. So if someone was working at night, GeoTab's not off for us to pause these updates to run other scripts. But with having more scheduled automations now, it is resulting in us having to plan a little more about what's happening, because they will conflict some, and if you have a long running one, you have to think about how to fit that in.
Yeah. And this is where you might, and that's where FME is scalable. So as your need grows, you can either adjust how you're handling your data, or you can scale the application. All right. Oh, I can't change to the next slide because only I will see it. So I guess, Rob,
I'm going to
you
go
gotta
to the the real thing now.
Yeah.
Here's
Like,
a
see where the snow
screenshot in
plows
case
are.
we happen to not be able to show much on the dashboard, but
Did you change the
apparently
slide?
it was meant to be today because it's been quiet, but now we have snow. So here's the live dashboard with our current, as I mentioned, the current event is what tells the FME process whether it's complete. It gives it the logic to determine whether something should be considered complete or not. Because of course, every route has been completed at some point in history, but we're only caring about that to a certain point that started today when Devon came in and started an event. Sounds like they're salting ahead of the snow, but it is accumulating on the roads. You have the plow locations. That's our ops center. But we have plows that are out on the road right now. So those
What are
get
the green
updated
lines, Rob?
Sorry?
What are the green versus the red lines?
So quite simply, the green was determined that it met the threshold that you would consider it complete. The number of points, GPS points. If I zoom in here, you can actually turn those on because we gave some more info back in the dashboard. It's off by default, but if you need to see, okay, well, how were these points? You can see them clustered around intersections. But those are the GPS trail that's helping determine if something was considered complete. You'll get red segments even when the work is finished. If there was a gap in GPS receiver or they're too far apart. So that's part of that fine tuning. And I've noticed GeoTab's own logic to be fairly consistent with what ours produces. They have a little more refinement. They have a yellow as well that will show partial. So we're again, we're not trying to reproduce it. We're just trying to get a quick status here. And that comes down to these charts. Like, put it all on one page, make it really simple to see. We have our defined routes. How are they doing? Who's assigned to them? And which is over in GeoTab. But what's the overall picture doing? That's the purpose of the dashboard here.
Oh yeah, and you have your routes all itemized at the bottom in that chart.
Yes.
So route 1, route 2. Okay. Very nice.
So this is live. This is them working today. I'm going to switch back to the presentation. We could revisit again. Let's hope this works. And I did mention GeoTab, so we wanted to go into a little more detail on some of the tools that are in play here. So as I mentioned earlier, it's our fleet management. It gives you much more detail than we have in the dashboard. It does have its own route completion. It's a little hard to see in this map. It has all of the fleet as well, so it's not just the plows. We've filtered it down to the plows for ours. But we're also populating database records that we keep in our SQL Server for safekeeping, for legal purposes. We're keeping the full history up to 20 years. So that's one requirement that came out of this that the GeoTab adapter has enabled us to do. We're doing okay for time, I think.
Yeah.
The winter event management. So that's the mobile apps I mentioned that help the staff actually report what they're doing. It's used to reconcile invoices for contractors. GeoTab is used to confirm what's happening, but that winter events declaration is also through the left side app there. So I declared yesterday Snowmageddon 2024, even though it was perfectly clear. And in the plow, they have their own app to share what they're doing. And also the key of why that, you could derive that from the data. The key there is to try and get some timesheet reporting as well, all into one instead of multiple places. We have our dashboard set up on the Power BI side that looks at these logs. Lets you go into detail about past events. So you can see, well, what maintenance events occurred within a winter event. That's all related by the dates that everything's input. So that winter event creation and closing, that's very important to get correct. So we've been coaching the staff on that. And as I mentioned, they review and validate timesheets and invoices with the data. If we have time, we might go further into the Power BI. There's a few different pages in it. Ultimately, it was, again, I don't want to call it secondary because it's part of their workflow, but you could build the dashboard by itself and not have that winter. We're using you'd have to determine how far back you were to look at the data, maybe at 48, 24-hour period. We decided, since we already had the intention to do winter event tracking, that we would use that exact date. And that worked out perfectly today because, as I mentioned, right before this presentation, there was no winter event. It showed up at 12:50, and the dashboard's now refreshed only data since that time to show how progress is going. So that really is all I had planned. So I think we can move to Q&A.
Yeah, I saw that there were some questions in the chat. So maybe we can look at some of them. One question, do you want me to read them to you, Rob, and then you do them? I'll read them
Sure.
out loud and then you can do them? Yeah, let's do that. What's the GeoTab adapter? Is that the API access to GeoTab?
So the adapter is a tool that's published by GeoTab. There's all kinds of documentation on it that you can find online. It's an executable that you'll run on a server. We have it in a Windows scheduled task. You set up a destination database, and it's basically doing your change detection. So we didn't have to build that logic into API calls. It's already set up to find new records and populate them in your database. That's really what it's doing. So it looks at all the tables, finds new records. If it went down for a bit, it will catch up when you restart it. So that having that tool took a little bit off of our plate to at least be able to have data in our environment to more easily connect to. But as I mentioned, we also wanted to have those records available in our environment. So
yeah, because you guys have a mandated requirement to keep access to that data over a prolonged period of time,
yes.
right? Yes.
And part of our general requirements for any of our technology solutions is to be able to report and capture data from them. And, with cloud systems kind of being the norm, we've established different ways that we, warehouse things. So that's an example where it has its own staging database that we're also keeping. So that we don't touch the data. It goes in and it is what it is, and then we read from it. The Windows,
Okay.
we found that the adapter will go down kind of randomly. It'll be good for a few days and then suddenly trip. And so as an executable, it will not restart itself. So we have the Windows scheduled task logic restarting every 15 minutes. So it's always checking, and if it's already running, it just says all good. It doesn't do anything, but keeps it's kickstarted a few times, but then you'll have like a week or two where it's all smooth. So that was one kind of fine-tuning element that we had.
All right, the next question is, how does FME runtime, what impact does the FME runtime have on credits used for live dashboard?
The credits. So are we referencing ArcGIS Online or?
I think in this case it might be for the live dashboard, but in reality, the FME is feeding your SDE database, right?
Yeah.
And then
So,
you're publishing your dashboard from your portal?
yes, it's ArcGIS Enterprise. So we're not limited by credits there, and the actual data is stored in SQL Server. So then we just have our feature services publishing up to the dashboard through ArcGIS Server.
And there was a second question in this that was, can you display this dashboard in an ArcGIS 3D scene?
We haven't explored that. I would say it's the same as any other of your 2D vector data. We haven't incorporated any height elements there. It would just be as you pull in any other typical vector data, because really the data itself is that set of roots, and the shapes don't change. The status of them changes in the attributes.
Another question, in a prolonged event, what prompts the street to revert to not plowed from plowed? So I guess you have a snow event, and then sometimes like they haven't finished plowing and another snow event starts.
That we've had to train to use the event logic to start a new round of plowing.
Okay.
But they actually preferred that because they're in control. Like they say,
Okay.
oh, we finished our initial round. We're calling people back in. That's a new event.
Okay. Interesting. Another question. Do you currently plan to track salting and brining? Oh yeah, brining, that's where you put like the salty mixture, I think, to prevent ice storms. Yeah, the treatment.
Again, the route completion logic is anytime the plow goes by, and then we tie it back to the event that was open at that time with the event log. So the event log, it's simple enough to mark a start and end and give some details, but it's actually very key for showing what was happening at the time. However, when I did mention our desire to get more detail, you can pull whether the plow is up or down, if the salter's working as the plow's going, you can get that from GeoTab. So we haven't gone down that just yet because we determined it wasn't needed at this time.
Yeah, the operations guys have it in GeoTab to do their operations management, but the data is there and you could use it. Yeah. What do you showcase in your Power BI dashboard that is different from the Esri dashboard? Oh no, okay, then the person wrote asked too soon.
Oh yeah, we talked about it a little. We had them combined into one experience builder product because you can show, tab to the different pages and show the GIS dashboard. There's still a very real potential that we pull what's in Power BI out to ArcGIS dashboards as well. So we would have to revise the data source of the apps and keep it fully SQL Server and then just publish services to the dashboard. So that's still a real possibility because Power BI, it's probably the quickest for any kind of SharePoint source, but it has its limitations. And then we're using two products here, so that's a definite possibility for streamlining in the future.
Mm-hmm. Are you using any AI to analyze the patterns in the archive time series data?
No AI at this time. The staff will use the dashboard and GeoTab to kind of reconcile between what's happened in event when they have to do their reporting and pay the invoices, etc.
Okay. Somebody asked, what are the advantages of using the Power Apps over Esri mobile solutions?
I think it was we were bringing in staff from different parts of our teams in IT, and a lot had to do with comfort level at the time and with different resources. So that played a factor in getting something done quickly. That could be a survey 123, absolutely. There is some custom logic in terms of really streamlining open close and keeping it as simple as possible. So that part might be a struggle in survey 123, but it's been well received because it's all they know to do is go to the landing page, open the app on their phone, and some staff are only using that, and then staff in the office are using the variety of tools, which we've created a little center for them to get to each one.
Okay. All right. Where are you storing? I mean, I think this question has been answered where you're storing the historic breadcrumbs, right? We know we're storing them in a SQL database, but there was also an additional question. How will you manage the size of the data over time?
I think we're clearing the breadcrumbs from the spatial layer because along with the status, I'd have to confirm 100% to be honest, but it can be re-derived from the GeoTab database anytime. So it's not needed to be also kept as the points necessarily. So
Okay.
I might be able to
And
find
even
out
in the
quickly.
SQL database, yeah, the SQL database itself, though, I would have an additional question possibly. Like, as your SQL database grows, the GeoTab adapter database, I'm assuming it has a large amount of capacity before you have to worry about the size of that.
Yeah, it's actually our second biggest database already. Just the staging, just the
Yeah.
non-spatial text, like it's all coordinate data, but it's already 35 gigs for what is a
Okay.
fairly small-ish town. So, and that's with a full history from 2011, 2012.
So you have a good decade of data.
Yeah.
35 gigs for a decade of data, about. Okay. Probably maybe eventually some archiving or something. Okay, so what is it in the vehicle that you said helps with the timesheet reporting? The drivers are using the app to start and stop their work, like the Power BI app, or is it?
Yep, I'll
Yeah.
go back to that
Is it?
slide. It's the Power Apps.
Okay.
Very basic mobile designed. It's mobile only actually, but it's you just load it up in Power Apps and it they don't have to. There are some details when you hit the start and then finish just closes it off.
Okay.
And we added the report an issue as an kind of a value add in
Okay.
case something obstructed them. Could be people in the public obstructing them. That happens. Could be debris, other issues they happen to see that need to be flagged. So that again, with us having control over the individual tools, that actually lets us have that flexibility that I was talking about.
Yeah. Another question. There's a lot of good questions here. Are multi-lane roads considered incompletion? So are you guys handling multi-lane roads?
There may be a handful in East Gwillimbury that that aren't regional. So if any, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's not a big factor for us at the end of the day. I could see that being
Yeah.
important though for regional. So for us, the logic is very simple, and the buffer as you saw, if you remember the breadcrumbs from the dashboard, some of them would be very hard to get down to that exact detail. But here's what I would do. You would increase the threshold of points you need because you'd be going by either with multiple plows or multiple passes, right? So suddenly you need an to increase that threshold of number of points that have been within the buffer. So you'd increase the threshold for certain roads. And then, you have to try and find a sweet spot because the GPS can be a little inconsistent sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a few strategies. Like the strategy that's used for yours is really good for your town. And
Yes.
it's you want to scale the solution to the complexity that you're dealing with. So if you have like one multi-lane road, it's not worth the effort because you're getting that overall statistic and that's what we're after. So data wise, I think that that's pretty much okay for that when you're looking at, high level, if you're looking at having a lot of boulevards and a lot of multi-lane roads, the business logic inside the FME would probably have to be a little bit more complex, right? You might be able to track like separated times, or you might be able to track like multiple passes. And there's different techniques depending. We had a similar project where it was actually gas detection operations, and we were having to match that up to the pipes. And in that case, we're actually using a little bit more complex of a logic because we were actually doing some chaining along the way. So there, you can come up with more complex formulas, like Rob said, to try to come up with something. It didn't make sense for East Gwillimbury because, like you said, they don't plow the regional roads. So for them, it's not necessarily a consideration. Okay, are you reporting? I think we pretty much answered this already, but we'll go for it. Are you reporting live plow location or a 15-minute lag for safety concerns of showing an employee's whereabouts? I've heard this one a lot, such as if someone wants to confront a driver because they're displeased with plowing operations.
Oh yeah. So internally, it's 5 minutes where there's not really a risk. It helps customer service give answers if need be, but externally we had, and there's no public map yet, but we had talked about at least 20-minute delay, both on the completion and the plow location.
That lets your dude get off the actual road before it shows up on the map. Yeah, he's like somewhere else. Yeah, but it makes sense, and I've heard this come up quite a lot actually.
There's a very fun dynamic of people who want it or don't. So
I know. You get like 50% of the people wanting to see the plow on the map coming down the road so they can quickly move their car. And not break the parking rules. And then you get the, but then you also get the idea of, okay, but maybe people shouldn't know exactly where the guy is because there are safety concerns for that. Some people are not happy with plow operations sometimes. And to have known people who work in that industry, I can, I can say that is a thing. Have any entrepreneurs approached you to automate the sensors used in the equipment? So I'm guessing the telemetry and the GPSs and the stuff that you guys put in the trucks.
Not to my knowledge, they may be in contact with the road operations team. I do understand they've added sensors over time, so it wasn't like we always had all the speed sensors and braking sensors. I think we probably started out with just GPS, but that's outside of my purview at this time.
But right now, I did have a question related to that, Rob. I can't remember the answer to this. Like, do you guys have outside contractors? That was part of the reason behind this, right? You're able to check the timesheets and have a sort of a reporting on the outside contractors that are doing the work. Are they equipped with equipment provided by the city? Are they do they equip themselves and like log into your GeoTab or?
We have, yeah, there's contractor accounts to use the log.
Okay.
So they're guest accounts. Are you referring to just technology or the plows and
Yeah, I was just
as
like the
well?
plows, like
I think we have a mix of town-owned vehicles or not, and then a mix of contractors and staff. So we had to try
Okay.
and include all possibilities, give enough flexibility.
Yeah, these are always interesting things because when you're trying to implement a lot of these solutions that have a geographic component to them, like when in cities, I find that there is really that concept of not all the employees, like not all the people working are, employees of the city, not all the equipment is owned by the city, and sometimes there is some some things to consider technologically, like when we're trying to implement a solution like this. Sometimes when I've dealt with other snowplow data, you can see like some of them are, town vehicles and some of them are not. Sometimes some of the clients, they don't have data coming from the contractors. They only have the progress of their own vehicles and some different mixes of stuff like that. All right, man, I think we got to 154.
Well, that's great. Thanks, Rob and Leslie. That's really neat. Rob, I might put you on the spot. Forgive me. When we first took a look at it, the dashboard was reporting 3.5% completed. I think when we looked at it again, it was 43. Just out of curiosity, what's the completion like?
Oh, you
Beautiful
really
sunny
did put him
day.
on the spot. Yeah, beautiful sunny day. All right, where are
Oh,
we
it's
at
32.
now?
32.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, at the
there
start
was
of
a
the
slide
call,
he had, I think, eh?
it was 3.5 at the start of the call.
3.5. Nice.
So they're getting there. It's going to overestimate a little bit based on the thresholds. That's just a known fact. And
Yeah.
it's really, is the work getting done or not? Answer it quickly. If we come across fantastic logic that helps narrow it down better, we're certainly going to implement it. And any of this is happy to be shared. So that's kind of a key thing here.
Yeah, no, that's really neat. Thanks for that. It's there's a lot of moving parts in this, and thanks for walking us through it. That's great. Thanks for your time. So I'd like to again thank Rob and Leslie for presenting us on this really neat ETL solution with again a lot of moving parts and very real as I look out the window to a very real snowstorm. Live data, right? I'd also like to thank everybody for their questions. A lot of good participation there, and to remind you to stay on if you wish for the next 30. What the B Spatial membership has asked us to do is just have a little networking chat after some of our presentations, and so you're welcome to go on with the rest of your day or stay on for the next 30 and just network, chat, and maybe talk more.